Okay, thank you for coming to Secretariat arranging the deputations to be seated. Now that we had a quorum, can we have Mr. Xu to talk about the motion? As soon as we had a quorum, we shall vote on it. First, I'd like to thank the deputations for coming to the Welfare Service Panel public hearing. We had a slight overrun on the first session. We hope that we can make best use of our time to comment onto RPP so that the board and our members could able to follow up. We shall deal with the motion. Mr. Hsu, please. With the shortage of the special CCCs, so that children with special needs would need to enroll in normal kindergartens and lack the appropriate support, to panel urge administration and to provide an extra special childcare worker through the OPRS for kindergarten that admitted special SEN children, to step up the rehab training and help school to provide appropriate support and protecting these children to getting appropriate support and right to education. For those who agree, please put up their hand. Okay, pass unanimously. Mr. Hsu, second motion. The panel urged this review to review the planning of traditional community and home care services and setting up case managers so that all the PWDs with need can get this affordable, professional, and people-centric care services. Since the elderly community care service voucher effectiveness is still in doubt, we need further validation. And where the diversified and complicated needs of the PWDs, we disagree with the government to roll out it to cover PWDs without considering the future development of the market providers and community care trends. Will those agree, please raise your hand? Okay, unanimously carried. We now enter the second session of the public hearing. First, I'd like to thank all for coming. Your comments today are not covered, protected under the electrical PMP ordinance. So please be responsible for your own comments. You'll be given 3 minutes each. Please wrap up your deputation within the 3-minute slot. First, can we have Ms. Lai Pui Mei? The RPP is supposed to indicate the rehab service model for the next 10 to 20 years, and looking at the interim report and on the service provision to the severely PWD is mainly consolidate existing services but lacked an innovation and imagination. Thus, the association expressed disappointment. As for the lifespan approach to examine the different needs at different stages, as for the severely handicapped, for example, the support after graduation and the residential home care, there's lack of exploration. How to assure the parents to let the children live in the community, or to let them spend their lives in the residential homes. The consultancy team should look into the whole person development for the residents, and well, I will only reiterate the SWD policy report on the working group on residential homes regulations. While this is not controversial, especially on the minimum salary, has been widely divergent from the public expectations. Especially on boosting the area per capita to 16 square meters, as well as adding more allied health, have been negated. So a question for the PolyU consultant team: do you fully subscribe to the SWD report For this PWD, especially the severely disabled, very often they need to live in the residential home LCHD for decades, and yet the progress report have no mention on the residential home life. Even for subvented homes, the most frequent criticism is only care-based and not people-centric. A lot of the residents have turned into just have nothing to do, and their cognitive ability and the bodily function have deteriorated over time. The association hoped that the consultancy team can explore the possibility of boosting the statutory minimum floor speed per capita, and also look into the daily life and so that they can have a quality and dignified existence. On continuing education, even the RPP suggested to provide continue further studies with SEN. However, they didn't really cover moderate or severe impairment.
When these persons graduate, they are usually before the age of 20. So this is a very valuable stage of their life. So the government should offer continuous education to these persons, intellectually handicapped persons. Now, Ms. Wang Qi-yan, now I don't know why this hearing is not held in nighttime, so those who work cannot come. Now, the residential home support scheme, now people cannot work. Now, this is outreach. This is about the outreach scheme. Now, would you offer a service that is equivalent to providing service at the hospital? So this is so the doctors who come in the outreach team, can they sign for the diapers and so on? Do they have the authority? Now, this year, the scheme has stopped functioning for my NGO. There are only 6 out of the 18 districts where this service is offered. Of course, you can't cover everyone. Now, this scheme covers only OT-PT. It doesn't cover accompanying of the person to the treatment. Now, so where do these people can go? Where can these people go to work? The SWD, you cut off the scheme, and yet you are smiling. And employment for the handicapped. Now, you should have a quota for the handicapped. They have that in Taiwan. We have asked for you to meet us. We waited for a long time. Every time we wait for over half a year. I don't know whether that's intentional of you. Now, RPP is a rehabilitation program plan, but why do you want to impose age limit? Now, the homes for the handicapped only take in those under 16. Now, so where are they going to live when they are not in that age bracket? Will you provide the service at their home? Thank you, Ms. Wong. I thank you for taking leave to come to this meeting. Now, you let the TV audience know that you want the government to take the lead in providing employment to the handicapped. Next, the Principal Alice Kwok for the Alliance for on the special education. Now, we agreed with the government objective of early identification intervention. Now, the document mentions that there are certain measures which are worthy of confirmation, but the government doesn't really confront the need of moderate of students with moderate SEN or serious SEN, because the kindergartens face two main difficulties for SEN children. First, there is no coordinated planning. Now, at the primary and secondary schools, it's already part of the jobs for this purpose are already on the establishment. Now, but for kindergartens, you need dedicated Senko. First, the kindergarten hours are short, the premises are small, so the teachers have to spend a longer time to coordinate with the outreach team. But the kindergarten teachers, they don't have classes, any class time, any vacant class time. Now, in kindergartens, the kindergarten has to spend a long time to observe the children and then communicate with the parents before arrange proper reference and support. Now, we also need to cater to the special needs of the SEN children. We have to make a curriculum for them with regard to their emotions and so on, but we do not have the adequate manpower. So the kindergartens are in even greater need for Senko than the medium and secondary, than the secondary and primary schools. The second difficulty is that when they accept the children with serious SEN, they don't receive any support. Now, many of such children enter ordinary kindergartens. Now, according to the Alliance, 82% of kindergartens accept these students, but their teams cannot cope with that. Now, the teacher-student ratio is 1:11 in ordinary kindergartens as opposed to 1:6 in special child care centers. So when the kindergartens do not take on these students, then the children receive no education. But if you take them, then the overall education quality suffers. There should be the Senko position in the ordinary kindergartens, and then through OPRS there should be additional teacher at the school to help the SEN children, to help the children to adjust to extracurricular activities. There should be one special child care worker for every 6 SEN children. finally, we hope that the administration can work with us, communicate with us more, so that the SEN children can receive proper support. The chairman dare not interrupt in the principal speech. Next, Mr. Wong Wai Hong. Now, the RPP is of a very wide scope. We are concerned about barrier-free access and services and the definition of the handicapped, especially for the physically and intellectually handicapped. Now, the Equal Opportunities Commission says that the handicapped should be receive proper support. Now, there was a TV program on those who suffer from psychiatric problems. Now, that should not be these psychosis patients should not are not limited to the elderly. So you should take a rehabilitation perspective. The government should provide relevant support for those under 60, and there should be a timeline on the manpower program. Is there a timetable or timeline? Now, beside me, there is a person suffering from autism and who has been on the waiting list for a residential home place for over 10 years. There should be a higher level of support. The government is still contemplating providing the residential facilities in new public housing estates. Now, there should be clear targets in the RPP. The government says that there should be compliance with the values of the UN CRPD. Now, but there are no specific proposals. Now, the last review was in 2007. Now, in the past few years, Hong Kong's economy has deteriorated from before. And then on SGN, for these SGN children, for the SGN minorities children. Now, what is your timetable for provision of service to them? Next, Mr. Chen of Hong Kong Rehabilitation Alliance. Now, the disabled, they have high aspirations. The government should pay heed to the proposals by the handicapped and the rehabilitation organizations. We are concerned about the enhancement of community support. Now, given the rapid aging of the community, the users of rehabilitation service will likely suffer a shortage. Now, the current policies are inadequate. The disabled face difficulties throughout the day, starting from the time they wake up. So they have difficulties in coping, but the current support is inadequate. Now, you can't just meet some of the or part of their needs. Some of the disabled reluctantly have to give up living independently and aging at home. So they were forced, they have been forced to choose the residential homes. So the government should deploy community resources. In the community, there may be many nurses who are physical therapists, social workers, and so on, who have just retired. Now, if these people can be properly deployed, then the skills can be put into to good effect, and it will help them, and it will help the disabled persons. Finally, we hope that the government will be open-minded in accepting all the innovative suggestions. We hope that the government can help the disabled in terms of resources and cater to their personal needs.
Mr. Reddy Chuck. And Chairman. For RPP, they can't really rehabilitate. If you say they are physically disabled, they can take on medication. Well, of course they will rehabilitate it. However, there's no turning back. There can only be worse. And the UNCPRDs on the human rights, the dignity of the disabilities, and so on. The government mindset is still medicine-based and failed to demonstrate the rights of the PWDs and failed to support the offered support based on their needs. Assessment is required. If they have any kind of need, in transport, accommodation, and medicine, legally, they can able to support them because they cannot rely on a family because the parents is family under great stress. On the census and distribution of the PWD, there's not really a reliable figure provided. That made the parents like us quite concerned. Without a proper census, how do you plan to conduct service planning? Well, the intellectual impairment is quite varied. Some of them are mild, some moderate, and some severe. Well, with proper planning, they would get top quality care. In the past 20 years, the ratio of the PWDs had increased, and also aged and with more with autism. And the apprenticeships under SWD and the staffing establishment have failed to move on with the times. In order to, and with no additional support and caring, they need to have a holistic review on the staffing ratios and hope they can establish service indicators. Thank you. Next, Ms. Yao Chen. I'm a parent of severely handicapped children. Well, I'd like to talk about the legal protection of the intellectually disabled as well as their medical needs. A few years ago, I joined the training program under SWD. However, there's no one got in touch with me. I don't know if it would consider as a suitable candidate. As for 9th of January, SWD called me whether I'm willing to serve as the suitable adult. Well, I had a cancer surgery and I don't think I'm able to help. I was prepared to help and only got contacted 2 years later. I believe that I would need to get retrained, especially I already chose that I don't mind serving any locations, but at this now, I don't think I can wholeheartedly to devote around the clock. On October 2019, I picked up something on the streets when I delivered to the police station, and I asked the policeman, do you know there's a guardianship card for the PWD? Parents are worried about whether children got into trouble, and the policeman told me that they have no idea. Well, I'm not able to ask any further questions. In this few months, the parents have been quite worried that my children will fall into trouble. And how can we get the peace of mind? I hope that you can have a comprehensive role for the mentally incapacitated person so that all the police staff, especially the frontline officers, and there's a huge communication barrier for the PWDs. If they need to see a doctor, the healthcare staff don't know how to deal with this, even though the hospitals allow the parents to accompany their children for some time. And however, each hospital vary in the practice, and even within the same hospital, the different nurses do not have the same approach. I hope that all the hospitals could allow parents to accompany their children in the course of treatment, and also provide training on special needs persons so that the intellectually disabled person on the cares rehab communications and on the clinic would also given appropriate care. A parent who had radio surgery, unfortunately, he had another bone fracture, and his son has already had a tongue cancer. He's more worried that no one take care of his son. At this time, he has no choice but to enter a psychiatric ward. When he know that her children got not cloth, and she almost passed out. Can the hospital follow on this case? Because a lot of the intellectually disabled cannot express themselves. Well, in the social workplace is on the residential home because they're not able to express themselves properly. Okay, thank you for letting us know. Mr. Young Kakyo. On the disability allowance, we usually require regular review. Well, sometimes a review every 6 months or 1 year, or something get to 3 to 5 years, or some of it can be perpetual. For each review, it would lead to a lot of anxiety and could be a lot of nuisance to the parents and the PWD, especially the intellectually disabled. This create a lot of emotional disturbance. On a lot of meetings, I've talked to the administration, SWD, the HA, and the Department of Health. They also agreed on the review on SWD that's actually unnecessary. they had already said that. I wonder if Hong Kong is too rich and still want to devote time and resources for those who have an irreversible condition. And they will subject him to review every few years, and each time quite a considerable number of them got downgraded from severe to general, or to general to no impairment. That had put the parents through the agony and torture and led to a bad outcome at the end. And very often it was only blamed on the doctor's document. Do we need to regularly review on these individuals? Shouldn't we allow the doctor to allocate more time to serve other people? That is the popular opinion by doctors. Well, they feel that the government have been particularly stingy to the PWD, especially the intellectually disabled. Is that because they don't know how to express themselves, and very often they don't have people to speak out for them? Thus, the resource they're getting and the assistance and their integration into society have lagged far behind. That's, I see, the very unfortunate. Thank you. Next, Ms. Leung Men Leung. Well, I would like to say a lot to the Undersecretary. Well, when you get limited time, so I'm only target on community support and home care services. What I find quite surprising is for the second stage report on the Chapter 5, it claimed that the Bureau and the consultant report would see that the outreach services as home care services, which had overestimated the support at the community level. And the home care service and the outreach services are different targets. How can you confound the two? And second, the current home care services, and two of them lack the same threshold and charges. And for the consultancy report, said they would promise to review the service scope. However, there's no mention what is the methodology. So you claim that there's no home meal delivery services, especially the delivery alone. There's no mention of these. There's no mention that the arrangements for weekends and holidays. Hope that the Bureau could look into this. The home care services has not been put under a planning ratio. However, it doesn't mean the demand isn't there. Hope the consultancy and the Bureau should consider put the home care service into planning ratio. And next, I'm going to talk about the CCSV. In the consultative report, it claimed that they will explore the possibility of a voucher and also collect 1,000 questionnaires to gauge the community feedback. Whether for the questionnaire or the PWD on the carriers don't quite grasp the CCSV service delivery and the pros and cons before submitting the questionnaire. So we have strong doubts on the outcome. And some people have mistaken the CCSV as the healthcare vouchers. You haven't quite explained what it is, and now want to explore the possibility and want to claim to collect 1,000 questionnaires. And how believable are these your feedback? That the problems of the CCSV, for example, is no services or varying standard, and there's insufficient flexibility and for how to complement and the co-payment. How Would you replicate the whole model onto the PWDs? Thus, we object to co-payment and the mean testing service delivery model. Ms. Leck have been coming to LegCo 2 days in a row. Thank you for speaking from your position. Next, Ms. Lam Chen. I'm Lam Chen. I'm a carer for rare disease children. While there is insufficient support for carers, and one time I passed out in a bus, and when I admitted to the hospital, the doctor claimed that I need to admit to check my condition, and my grandchildren was with me, but I couldn't make it. Nobody would take care of him. The district community center had closed. I keep calling. Nobody pick up the phone. Only give the address, and when you press this or that button, and I tell doctors that I can't enter the hospital, and the pain endure for months.
Now, even though there is a vacancy to provide service for temporary custody, temporary care, it takes days. So very often they let the carer go into hospital, and that spends government money because in the hospital authority. So the government should set up a 24-hour hotline for elderly persons or disabled persons who have emergency needs, to provide support for them, and there should be simplified procedures to provide temporary custody or care for the person being cared for. There is very inadequate community support. The grandchild that I look after, he has a great urge to eat, and he was given medicine, so he becomes rather sedated, and he becomes rather incapacitated as a person. I'm sorry. I'm nervous. So I hope that there can be more emotional support for autistic and intellectually handicapped children, and that there should be short-term custody service for them. Now, the private care homes are of poor quality. They are dirty, inadequate manpower. They give the wrong medicine when the children move in. They are not helped, and when they come back, I have to help them to recover in their emotions. The government should also appreciate the needs of the carers, elderly carers like myself. I'm afraid that I may die any time. I sleep for 2 hours, and I become numb in my limbs. Now, I hope acupuncture can help me, but it costs hundreds of dollars. If I go there, I don't have enough money for food. Thank you. You tell us in a very true way of the difficulties faced by the carers. I'm really afraid that I may die in my sleep. We are carers. We can't sleep well because we care for those in our care. I support the young. I will support the young people of Hong Kong forever. Where is the fat grandchild? So he's eating upstairs. Now let's work to help those in need. Next, Mr. Lee Wai, the Association of Concern for the Elderly. Chairman, I come to this meeting every year. Some issues have been raised already. The manager of the center, the managers of the centers, they don't have much authority, and they are just ordinary social workers that fill the position. There isn't much that they can do. Mr. Choi is aware the managers serve there only a short period, and they are replaced by social workers. The managers should have received special training, especially because they are supposed to understand about the handicapped persons. Ordinary social workers cannot do the job. I have strong feelings about that. Next, about the carers. Now, every year I talk about the issue. The carer allowances have been in place for quite a while. Some receive them, some don't. This is very unreasonable. I raised this issue before, and I will in the future. Many elderly persons look after a disabled person. They suffer so much that they want to die themselves. Why doesn't the government give them some reward, some allowance? You should give them reward because they take over the work instead of the government. Now they say they cannot receive double benefit. They already received old age allowance or OALA. They receive CSSA. Now, when someone is in the 70s or 80s and he looks after a disabled person, isn't that a tragedy? I have to talk about this over the years. Now, the UN CRPD Article 19 says that the disabled should live independently with dignity. Why is it that Hong Kong is within is under this convention, but it doesn't implement that? thank you for your strong expression, and you really know the convention. I hope you will be heeded by the officials. Next, Ms. Poon Wai Mui, of the group of concern for the disabled. The Secretariat will help you. We'll give you a handheld mic, maybe. Maybe someone else can speak first, and then we will arrange for a handheld mic. The Hong Kong Christian Service, Ms. Wong. Now, on preschool service, we appreciate the government providing this outreach service. Now, the kindergartens don't have dedicated teachers to provide these services, so the outreach service is of limited effect. So now, this arrangement will involve both the SWD and Education Bureau, so we hope the Labor and Welfare Bureau will provide the necessary resources. Now, preschool places are increasing. Now, when the queue is shorter, the government should review the scheme, how the outreach services can be improved, and so that the resources can be deployed more effectively. On location planning, right now the standards have been in place for over 20 years, and they do not meet the needs of the SEN children. We think that the standards should be enhanced so that the parents and the children are helped. Now, very often we are expected to identify commercial premises by ourselves, but we need approval by the SWD, the FSD, and so on. And by the time the approvals are available, the commercial units have already been taken up by somebody else. So we hope that the approval process can be speeded up. And finally, on manpower and training. Now, in recent years, the SWD has increased number of rehabilitation services, and private organizations have also increased the services. So there has been an increased demand for trained personnel. So the NGOs can have difficulty competing with the government and with private organizations. The government should talk to the tertiary institutions so that they provide enough education places for the industry. Next, Ms. Poon Wai Mui. We hear you, yes? Now, if the carer or the foreign domestic helper is sick or on leave, then we have to apply for a temporary home for 14 days. Now, people tell us that there is no place for wheelchairs, so they have to lie in bed for 24 hours a day, and nobody helps to turn the person around over from his back. Now, Very often we stay there a long time and nobody comes to assist. People say they would rather die and than move into these temporary homes, temporary private accommodation. Now, the government should provide more choices. So we just need a few days so that the foreign domestic helper can come back from leave. Now, on the service you mentioned, did you move in there yourself or you only hear from others? Sorry, the Secretariat will try to help you. Sometimes we are able to engage foreign domestic helpers who are in between contracts. We find them through friends who live nearby. So, well, thank you for your attendance at the Legislative.
人士關
Miss Lam Sin Man. Life is no choices since the moment you're born with any hereditary disease to entering schools. Well, you don't really make those choices. Where we can choose, like your jobs, marriage, children, or to get treatment. Well, this major gambles because you want to marry in any case. The government have a lot of resource, not really want to help the PWD so that we have no choices. For example, the residential homes, to live in those. No one else dare living there, just we don't have any choices because if we don't live there, there's a long queue for this. We don't have any other choices. What lifespan planning we're talking about? And will claim you are providing a training for all this training used for midway homes or sheltered workshops. With any employment opportunities, none. While the other workers have been working for such long hours, we're not able to work, so they actually been doing our job too. And speaking of our residential homes, then RPP has simply just copy and paste on the nurse and RCHE home quality that haven't failed to incorporate the community's views. For example, request 8+8 in order to reduce the work injuries since this is too small. And however, this had never been taken seriously. On the manning ratio, no matter how much you change, because you have a hiring difficulty, but have you considered how would you increase manpower, for example, through training opportunities and also the qualification framework to make the positions attractive? And as keep complaining is you can't hire enough people, then you just import labor. For the residents, people would die in entering those homes because this is a locked battle. What the workers are overstressed and while nobody really care about us due to the shortage of manpower. The manning ratio is unreasonable. There's only one or 2 staff taking care over 100 people, which have a nutritionist, Chinese and herbalist, or the allied health professional, or even enhance our psychological health. I agree with the times in having animal doctors. This can heal our psychological trauma. Thank you. Well, animal doctors is sound policy. Next, Ms. Wang Xiaochan. I'm the rep for the hearing impaired. I have a few major demands today on the hearing aid, the BH Baha machine. My grandchildren is 8 years old. Well, they suffer from small ears and no oral canal. They rely on the Baha machine for listening. And well, it's listening at over 70 decibels, and yet the Baha machines have never get any government subsidy. Well, my Croatia suffers a very small bunch that have been ignored by the government. Baha machine costs over $40,000, and maintenance will be $2,000, and it will be replaced every 3 years. However, to general household, this is a huge financial burden. However, we felt helpless. We're not able to procure this machine because the EDB had responded that the HA claimed the medical devices, and only at FA they only need their bone induction. Well, if with the Baha machine they can listen to something. Now in P3 school, there's a mainstream schools. My children had quite good grades with the Baha machine. They're able to get the hearing, and we really like the music, and we're learning violin. And now in level 5, we urge the government to demands on to offer subsidy on the Baha machine and also on the maintenance and repairs, because they need to conduct a reconstruction surgery, and they should be reimbursed in order to enhance their self-image. The EDB on the FM, the artificial cochlear machine have been 2 and old models and low frequency that they need to pay on their own, since it's be antiquated model. Can the government be more flexible and offering cash subsidy or cochlears with high frequency? After this surgery, the maintenance and replacement, every 3 years they could fully reimburse their costs. They will relax the disability allowance to a single ear hearing loss. Currently, only both ears loss of 7 decibels to be eligible. Also request the government to allow the carriers to be entitled to the $2 transport subsidy scheme, and also boost up the speech therapist service at school, because the private speech therapy service is too expensive, and also of diverse quality. Must just the government allocate more resources with special CCCs and also integrated schools. For hearing impaired athletes, there is a huge difference. They're not eligible for a sports institute subsidy. When the government consider could sponsor athletes to go on overseas competitions. We want the government to respond to our demands to let the listening impaired children a fair learning opportunity. So they can listen and speak into integrated. There's a technical query raised that the equipment the government can more flexible. Hope the Undersecretary and LWB can offer more detailed response. Ms. Chow Yun Man, Eunice Chow. Hello, LWB. Well, in 2 sessions, we see a lot of the home residents and the carers reps and of the different PWDs speaking up. It means it's supposed to be the beneficiaries who need our help. However, they are important member of a society and their capabilities are not less than any one of us. What they lack is the government just need to give them a helping hand. Well, just now that they're just short of one equipment, and those living in homes, they probably lack training and learning opportunities. Well, they can still just function as any able-bodied citizens. What we want to achieve through this RPP. In other public hearings, and also we noted other views, but on the proposed, not much change in the recommendations, and on the residential homes, the staffing ratios and the minimum areas and professional support, there's no update. And do we have a timetable for the new RCHDs? Well, someone mentioned it take 10 years. Well, some social workers told me that it will need to wait 15 years or more because there were no increase in the number of RCHE's locations. Were there any voluntary departures for free up space, and how do we get the spaces? Well, and only through the depth standard would have a new slots for those on the waiting list. That's a quite desperate figure, and with Hong Kong, we yet to have a formal set of data that how many of those would require the residential services. For the carers, the Civic Party especially on the care for the 2 elderly, and we heard a lot of real stories that we're worried that upon their passing, there's no one taking care of their children or grandchildren. That's why the employment support is so important, because we want to make these people self-reliant. Why the elderly disabled so worried? Because they don't have the chance to enter the job market. As the biggest employer in Hong Kong, if they don't take the lead to create positions for the PWDs, and how would the private sector follow? Thank you. Ms. Feng Wei Ying. I'm a locally born citizen. From kindergarten to university, I have lots of classmates or people with different disabilities or handicap. Well, I'm a retired social worker. I believe that anytime soon I will become a PWD. I see the government have been working hard to come up with the RPP that took 13 years. Well, of the 80% of public engagement exercise, the viewer got that it claimed that you will launch when and where necessary, and very often the briefing sessions become a complaint session, a pleading session. Besides as and when necessary, I personally the mandate of any services there should be a regular review by a task force with report and oversight. Whether you call it a rehab policy or PWD service policy, there should be such mechanism in place. Otherwise, we're always catching up or having service gaps. And after listening to so much deputations, I noticed there's a problem that the consulting team has a hard time to identify the specialized services, and their understanding had failed to catch up with the UNCPRD context. They have all the wording on the service study. For example, on autonomy and independence. Well, if there's no information access and you only get the 3 minutes to speak at the public engagement sessions or give written submission, if you don't understand the document, what consultation are you talking about? And for the whole RPP, there's very little inkling on the mainstreaming of PWD perspectives.
做唔到啦，因為如果
Now, if we do not want to rename RPP as the plan for services for the handicapped, then even if you say you are rights-oriented, the RPP still doesn't pass the grade. So I hope when you discuss policies, do not expect us to tell you a lot of sorry tales. Now, we are just telling you about the rights that our citizens should expect. Now, you spend $20 million on publicity, but actually all the officials and all the universities need to get a real understanding of the UNCRPD. Now, every year I write a letter to the Secretary, Mr. Law Chi Kwong. I asked him for a meeting. He said he doesn't have time. For 2 years now, he wouldn't meet with us. Now, you have 321 pages of RPP. But we wrote a document of 95 pages. But his staff tell us that the opinions expressed by us have been incorporated in his document, but we don't see it anywhere. Now, the RPP doesn't mention the long-term ill. I'm a person suffering from long-term illness. We need government welfare like disability allowance, and we need government services. But the Census and Statistics Department doesn't provide data on those who are suffering from long-term illness. So the Polytechnic team cannot provide analysis and recommendations on how to treat and serve this group of people. Now, the RPP is done Does it really resolve our problems? The government officials cannot come up with policies that work and implementable and are implementable. We're trying to help all the handicapped, but the opinions expressed by us who are long-term ill are ignored. So I'm very unhappy. I hope that the Secretary can hear what I'm saying in this meeting. I want to meet him. I want to receive his love and care, but he couldn't supply that. Thank you. The Secretary was supposed to be here, but I hope the Undersecretary can respond on his behalf. Next, Mr. Ho Wai Hong, Sai Kung District Councillor. I'm also a member of the Labour Party. Previously, I attended similar public hearings. It was about cancer patients. Now, 4 areas: prevention, checkup, treatment, and recovery. Now, we are talking about recovery or rehabilitation. Now, Hong Kong is deficient in this regard. Now, when you fall ill, you cannot plan for that, but you can plan for rehabilitation. The government can certainly do more. I'd like to mention 4 aspects. Now, disability allowance. I took part in RPP public consultation meeting. Almost 300 pages of recommendations on strategies. It's very difficult to read, especially for the handicapped. Now, the strategic recommendations are out of touch with reality, in my opinion. Now, if they want to get more feedback, they should simplify the information. Now, also, we don't know the definition of the disabled. There are very, very vague descriptions. The disabled should have the right to live a life with dignity. I hope the administration and the PolyU team can tell us more about the definition of the disabled and on a working environment friendly to the disabled. We talk about innovation. Now, you encourage private bodies to employ more disabled persons, but do you have figures on how many disabled persons have been recruited in various organizations? What is the wastage rate? How many years do they work there? And then on accessibility and barrier-free services. Now, this paper mentions travel train analysis. I don't know what it is. It's supposed to be a basis for policies. So it's very difficult to understand. I also like to talk about parking spaces. It's very important for accessibility by the disabled. 30 seconds more, please. Now, very often in committee when there are arguments, very often there's a deficiency in information. Some parking spaces are too narrow, especially in the urban areas. Those who are using wheelchairs have difficulty when they wish to park their vehicles. Now, I come from Sai-Kung district, a rural area. Now, I was told that elderly persons who live in villages need barrier-free facilities also. So that should also be incorporated in the RPP. At least there should be a timetable for them. Next, Mr. Ho Kao Leung from the Hong Kong Association for the Blind Persons. In the first two stages, views have been expressed, including views from us. Now, today I hope to air some innovative opinions. Now, apart from need to review individual policy areas, we think there should be concepts that apply across policies. We have specific recommendations. First, set up a blind persons amenities committee so that policies meet their needs. Secondly, the government should review existing law to see whether they are in accordance with CRPD, the rights for the Convention for the Rights of Blind Persons, CRPP. Now, there should be a regular review mechanism for respect for of the welfare for disabled of blind persons, and then there should be reference to international standards on the definition of visual handicaps. Now, we should be in line with the international practice. The government should uniformly have a uniform definition so that there wouldn't be any misunderstanding when the blind apply for services. Now, the RPP now we think that the blindness should not just be defined by a medical definition. Now, the government should use new ways to adopt new ways of definition so that the blind will not lose the opportunity for service. Now, in recommendation 32 under theme 9, it says that the SWD will provide funding for financial resources. We think that the government should also upgrade the establishment so that the organizations for the visually handicapped receive more assistance. And also, many civic organizations raised requests for employment quota, government taking the lead to hire handicapped persons, and the government should come up with an indicator for the hiring of handicapped persons. So we hope that these innovative points should be taken on board by the consulting team and by the administration. I exercised my right as chairman to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. So I first invite the administration to respond, and members who wish to speak should so indicate. The Undersecretary, we thank those who expressed their views. We have had exchanges on in other meetings. Now, the government's policy objectives to provide skills training and service for the handicapped to find work and do themselves to find and be able to work. We try to match handicapped persons who have certain experiences and skills. We try to let the employers to see the merits of employing handicapped persons. We also try to create jobs through social enterprises. Now, very often when we talk to handicapped persons or disabled persons, we find out why they stay on the job relatively short time, and we try to find out the difficulties they face in their jobs. So we follow up on the difficulties that they face. Very often, the employers are the source of difficulties. Now, in our job matching, we try to provide more support to the supervisors and managers involved so that they can cooperate better with the disabled, and also we try to provide a better work environment through funds. And so we don't just help them by increasing the quota. We hope that they can be able to realize their potential. We don't want to get them to be labeled.
And quite a few mentioned on the residential homes. Well, it also been on the report under theme number 10 on boosting the statutory minimum area, improving the staffing requirements. On the long-term development and regulation, we hope to boost manpower training so that the service and the skill level can be enhanced. On the respite places, they managed to purchase some bed space for emergency placement. Well, they will be able to be available. And like I mentioned, on how do we improve the service quality and the environment, that was also been touched on in this review. One specific question: while there's a service gap, well, on population planning, we'll get to see or predict the age increase. We'd like to the shortcoming. So in this LPP, we have offered different ways for better grasp on these service projections. Besides, we have the short and medium long-term measures. For example, buying premises, and the ongoing measures that we insert clauses in the land auctions for the inclusion of social welfare facilities. On the carers policy, we'll also be undertaking some study in terms of the life planning of the carers, from turning into a carer to stop being a carer. How does our policy can be oriented from their perspective? So this study have just been started. There are other areas, but I don't want to be too talkative. I come here to listen to your views, and your views have definitely been heard. Now I hand back the floor to the members and chairman. I see that Mr. Xu must put up their hand. Mr. Xu, 4 minutes Q&A included. I'm not using up my 4 minutes. I want to leave some time to let the deputations to respond to the deputy secretary. Well, the last sentence is always said, well, I will not use up my time. Well, I want to let the deputations to comment on Mr. Choi's response. On the self-help organizations, subset organizations, there's just no concrete support. The state government to propose support for the support organization to promote the support between the carers and the patients, and quote unquote. Well, needless to say, it also mentioned in past document they carried out development of health mutual support organizations. While the government is offering more subsidy, but at the same time, there are also more new organizations in place, and the increasing number have surpassed the funding increase, and there's still a severe shortage, and we're not able to meet the daily expenses. Besides conducting a review, so any long-term strategy for the mutual help organizations, and what's government's position on the role of these organizations? Well, that was a stupid question. Of the 10 measures of 100 billion, they have no objective, no strategy, no logic, no consistency. Well, this question was at old school, but I'm old school, so I'm still asking the right questions. I want to leave some time for deputations to respond to the Undersecretary's comments. You want the deputations? Okay, I will answer at the last. Would any deputations would like to respond to the Undersecretary like a minute or something?
我哋
Well, this is the member speaking slot. Okay, well, the Carrie Slams have announced 10 new measures. Well, it seems that the resistance is taking a better job than lobbying. Well, been lobbying for over 10 decades, and now we really need to step out front so that we can get more welfare benefits. You've been quite forward, so be careful. You've been quite out front and careful. You get what I'm saying. Sorry for the offense. Mr. Xu? Okay, I allow you to invite another deputation to speak. How about the Vice Chairman, Mr. Ho? What for the self-help organizations? Well, currently their subsidy is sorely lacking. It's all without a long-term planning. Thus, I hope that the Undersecretary can respond to this. How to let this self-help organization to develop instead of just giving them the money but no planning. Just that the Undersecretary have touched on employment. Well, the situation have been related to many times. Well, it's good to have different policy support, but we don't have the chance for the PWD to enter the job market. How many policies and measures to support the PWDs? Well, it's no point if the PWD aren't hired in the first place. We need to tackle the cause of the problem. How the government could take the lead in hiring more PWDs and set up the employment quality system. Undersecretary, a concise response. Unemployment, I've been in touch with you, so we will see how we offer more places There's one point on the RP was mentioned. Well, a lot of employers, they also offer positive feedback for hiring PWDs. We need more stories like these to be shared so that more employers will know the benefits of hiring PWDs. So that's my supplement. Next, Dr. Fernando Chung. Ms. Lam have been the most sensible one. Well, Mr. Chu Ho Lam won the Undersecretary's favor. Well, the secretaries have been very busy with the Carrie Lam announcing the 10 livelihood measures, which included those waiting more than 3 years in the public housing to offering a cash subsidy till they got allocated PRH. We've been calling this for so long. I remember what deputations said. For the waiting list for the LCHD have been over a decade. So what? Does that mean we can ignore them? For those with immediate need, with urgent assistance, like Ms. Lam herself, I particularly remember she said she was afraid that she would never wake up when she sleep. She was worried about leaving her grandchild behind. Recently, we had a parent. Well, he's a chairman of the parent association. That he didn't wake up and left his a physically disabled son. When it's about to pass away, the son finally managed to call for help because he don't quite know how to speak. Just imagine the agony of the parents. If you want to talk sense with the government, forget about it. For those 10 new measures, how many years have we been lobbying for them? Have you joined us? I've been calling for so many years. I almost lost my voice. So actually, we rely on the courageous pages, and we're complaining about how miserable we are. Did they listen? Well, just have the undersecretary to put up with us. That he will get his salary and enjoy a good life. It's all pointless. The administration is not engaging with us sensibly. For this parliamentary system or talking sense with the government, it was rather pointless. The whole RPP, what are you talking about? It's not really want to respond to our needs. Well, they get the name wrong. We told them many times, what rehabilitation talking about? Are you expected to rehabilitate for there's so many kind of disability and conditions. Why want to give them a framework and aim for rehabilitation? We're not giving them jobs. They're not sick. Well, it's the government that's sick. You're the one who need to be rehabilitated. Well, the society have moved past beyond this. Well, it's kind of a waste of time discussing politics with him. Does anyone else? Well, Ms. Lam Seaman would like to say something. Ms. Lam. On the residential homes, we really need a natural person to be accountable and also get capabilities for the home manager. For any breaches, how would the government punish them? We can here tolerate them for a decade while granting them exemptions. I hope the government could listen to us and analyze the pros and cons. Well, I'm sure some of our recommendations would be useful. especially on the residential homes working group, we have developed a lot of work and provide a lot of advice. Hope it does not affect consultation that could implement in the recommendations, so that those that would enter the LCH will be enter a life of hell. I thought personally that that within 2 years, 5 deaths, and actually were young residents, because you ignore them, don't take care of them. Then they will try to make and you are forcing them to turn into thieves, and that's quite regrettable.
罪人就係
Only 20, 30 years old, because this government has been cruel and failed to take care of the future of the young people, to make them desperate and put them on the path of no return. I think you're probably referring to the reform of the RCHD, especially on the home managers. I believe that the government will need to respond on other occasions. I suppose you didn't really want to get a reply from the administration. Dr. Chang, anything to add? None. Even though I didn't love me so, I'm sure that we can carry the torch for you for the time to come. That's the end of the members' question. Any final wrap up by the Secretary, then we shall wrap up.
Thank you, Chairman. We thank the deputations for their views. Now, I don't think that the forceful the means would be a way to implement policies. Now, we have met with the stakeholders many times, and we have heard good suggestions we try to implement. And in the past 2 years, at the Labor Welfare Bureau, we have allocated funds at a very rapid speed, and a lot will be implemented. We thank you all for this meeting. And we hope that in the future we will be able to benefit all the disabled and the carers. And I believe in coming days I will continue to meet with you. Now, your response is quite forceful in itself. We thank you all. It's a long-term battle. Mr. Shu Ka-chen and Dr. Fernando Cheung have had a lot to reflect upon, given what they all the efforts in the past. We hope that in the remaining time of this session, we will be able to achieve more. Thank you for the meeting.